Hello, everyone. Welcome to a webinar about Agri-PV. We're just going to wait for a couple of minutes for more people to join, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So if you want to grab a coffee or cup of tea, you have enough time. We're just going to wait 1 minute more, and then we will get started with my colleague Rocío, giving you an overview basically of what Agri-PV is and the state of the market at the moment. And then in the second part, just to spoil a bit, I will show you the software and what you can do basically for Agri-PV project in RatedPower. Hi, hope you're doing great, Borja. And we will also take, of course, all of the questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have any question, you can just drop them in the question box and we will reply at the end.
Okay, so well, I think Helene, we can start now. So hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. So as Helene was introducing before, our topic today is agrivoltaic projects from planning to layouts and market opportunities. So before we dive in, let me brief explain how the session will flow. So my name is Rocío. I'm account executive for the DACH market at RatedPower, and I will be leading the first part of today's session, and I'm joined by my colleague Helene.
Yeah, and me on my side as work as a technical advisor at RatedPower. So I'm gonna do the second part of the webinar and showcasing the software and what you can do, or you can apply the first part kind of to RatedPower.
Yes, so in the first section, I will go through 3 points. So what agrivoltaics are, why agrivoltaics are becoming increasingly relevant nowadays, and also an overview of European trends. And then my colleague Helene, as just said, will continue with Agri-PV simulations in RatedPower. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. So what is agrivoltaics? So most large ground-mounted solar PV plants are installed on land used exclusively for energy generation. And agrivoltaics, by contrast, is about co-locating solar panels with agricultural activities on the same piece of land. This means that while the panels generate renewable electricity, the land continues to be productive for crops or livestock. So it's a dual-use approach that maximizes efficiency and resilience, creating benefits for both agriculture and energy. So there are different systems designed depending on the needs of the farmland and of the project, but let me highlight the 3 most common ones. Here, as you can see in the slide, there I put 3 different ones. We have first the high elevated Agri-PV, then the vertical bifacial panels, and then tracking systems. So I'm going to start explaining the high elevated Agri-PV. Here the panels are mounted at a higher level, so crops can grow underneath with little interference. This approach is often used in fruit cultivations and sometimes is even called fruit voltaics. So beyond energy generation, it adds extra value for farmers because the PV modules provide natural protection against hail, heavy rain, or excessive sun exposure. And in many cases, it reduces the need for plastics, nets, or foils to protect the crops. And yeah, since the infrastructure lasts decades, farmers gain long-term climate resilience. And then we have the vertical bifacial panels. These systems where panels are installed vertically and can capture sunlight on both sides. And there are companies like Next to Sun that have pioneered this approach. And what is the advantage about this panel? Well, they occupy very little ground space, meaning that up to 85% of the land remains available for farming. And this works especially well for arable crops like cereals, potatoes, or rapeseed. And yeah, the panels also help reduce wind, which lowers soil erosion, and the shade they create can also reduce the water demand of the plants. So yeah, and lastly, we have the tracking systems. In this setup, solar modules are mounted on trackers that follow the sun's path from east to west. For the PV system, this means a higher energy yield, and also for the crops, it ensures a more balanced distribution of sunlight throughout the day, preventing overexposure in certain areas. And yeah, also this configuration is particularly attractive because it keeps a large portion of land open and flexible for different agricultural uses, while at the same time boosting the profitability of the solar plant. Okay, so yeah, now we're gonna move to why agrivoltaics. So as we've seen, agrivoltaics brings together solar energy and agriculture on the same land. But the key question is, why does it matter? So now I'm gonna go through some of the main benefits, as you can see in the slide, and yeah. Studies, including one published in the Nature Sustainability, highlight that collocating solar and agriculture provides multiple advantages, such as, for example, the first one, efficient land use. As I was mentioning before, agrivoltaics made it possible to produce both food and renewable electricity on the same land. And this dual use is especially valuable where space is limited and competition for land is strong, obviously. So yeah, and then we have agricultural resilience. Their solar panels provide partial shading, which can protect crops against excessive heat, heavy rain, or hail, as I was mentioning in one of the types of modules before. And this helps stabilize yields, reduce irrigation needs, and improve also the climate resilience for farmers. And then we have the third benefit would be economic benefits. Agri-PV creates new revenue streams for landowners, of course. Farmers can continue with agriculture while also generating electricity to sell to the grid or to use it on site. And yeah, this can significantly reduce the energy cost. And then the last benefit that we put in this slide is combating climate change, because by generating clean electricity, agrivoltaics reduces greenhouse gas emissions and supports the energy transition, while at the same time preserving farmland for food production. And yeah, beyond these four main points, there are also wider benefits at the community level. Farmers and developers can work together to make rural areas more sustainable and resilient, instead of having to choose between food or energy. And yeah, then as mentioned before, I'm going to talk now a little bit about the European trends. But before diving into individual countries, I'm going to start with European context. So the European Union has set very ambitious targets. The total solar energy deployment is expected to reach around 750 gigawatts by 2030. And to achieve this, one of the key solutions being explored is dual land use and agrivoltaics in particular. So however, there is no unified European Union legislation on agrivoltaics, and instead the regulation is fragmented and handled at the national level. So this is creating right now challenges in the European Union and in some countries, because agrivoltaics sits right at the intersection of two domains, of course, agriculture and renewable energy. And yeah, each country interprets and regulates it differently, which explains why we see such a variety of approaches across Europe. So yeah, now I'm gonna talk and explain a little bit country by country, and I'm gonna give some examples. For example, I'm gonna start with France. Why France? Because France is the biggest agrivoltaics market in Europe right now, with the 2023 Renewable Energy Acceleration Law. Agrivoltaics has been formally defined, and clear criteria have been set to make sure agricultural activity is preserved alongside solar. So in France in particular, there are 5 mandatory criteria. The first one would be direct and measurable service, improving agronomic potential and impact adapting to climate change, improving animal welfare. And then we have the second criteria was guarantee significance of agricultural production. Then the third one was maintain sustainable agricultural income. The fourth, agricultural activity must remain the main activity. And then the fifth would be reversibility. Okay, so now we have Germany. Germany is also one of the main markets in Europe in terms of agrivoltaics. Germany has developed a technical definition with the DIN spec 91434, and a full standard is on the way right now. So in 2022, the country also launched its first dedicated tenders for agrivoltaics and floating solar, showing a strong institutional support. And right now, the current regulation allows up to 2.5 hectares of privileged agri-PV development. And requires 66% of crop coverage and 85% of standard agricultural productivity. In Italy, for example, they only allow what it calls the advanced agrivoltaics on farmland. These are systems that guarantee continued agricultural production, and the government is backing this with significant funding. For example, 1.72 gigawatts supported with 2.35 billion euros. And yeah, in Spain, for example, there is no national framework yet, but Catalonia has introduced a specific route. For example, projects must maintain at least 60% of the original crop yield, and land coverage is kept at 15 till 20%. It depends on the model type. And well, the UK has growing interest in agrivoltaics, but political pressure around food security makes large-scale projects more complex. But the topic is right now on the agenda, and I'm sure they will make improvement on this. And then we have Portugal. Portugal right now grants agricultural land a special protection status with only limited exceptions for agrivoltaics. And yeah, regulation as well is still in an innovation and pilot phase. And lastly, Austria supports agrivoltaics through its Federal Renewable Energy Expansion Act, with subsidies of up to 30%. But actual implementation depends on state and local regulations, which vary widely across the country. So while Europe as a whole is pushing for more solar and sees agrivoltaics as a solution, the regulatory landscape remains fragmented. And France, Germany, and Italy are taking the lead with dedicated frameworks and fundings, but others are still experimenting and developing pilot projects. Helene, you're muted.
Yeah, I am. Sorry. Thank you very much, Rocío, for that very interesting first part. And now, basically, I'm just going to jump in RatedPower and show you in more or less 10 minutes, so we have time for question, what you can do basically in the software in order to simulate Agri-PV projects. So I'm just going to get out of PowerPoint. Hopefully, sorry, just to go to RatedPower. So for those that are not familiar with RatedPower as a software, basically it's a cloud-based solution, and the idea is to allow users to simulate and optimize PV plant, but also hybrid plant and BESS standalone plant. And for today's session, I just prepared an Agri-PV project and we're going to go through the different options basically you can use in the software in order to simulate Agri-PV projects. So the first point I wanted to tackle today is the option when defining your site. So basically defining the area for your PV plant. It's the option to define some restricted areas that could be used potentially for the agricultural activity, let's say. For instance, so like water tanks, maybe, or cattle chutes. And on that part, for those that use the software, you have the option when creating your site, basically, to define or import some restricted areas. And if you want to, let's say, treat them differently or have a specific name per area, you have the option to create different folders kind of for the areas. So if here, for instance, I want maybe to include an additional water tank on that part, I can go to polygon, restricted area, circle, then draw a circle and put this restricted area in a specific folder in here. So it will be with maybe my RA type 1 or type 2, for instance. So just to kind of differentiate the restricted areas. And then in the layouts section of the software, I will have the option basically to define kind of the name for my specific area. So in here and say maybe that area is a water tank and that other area is a cattle chute, for instance. And I will be able also to put a specific color and maybe put a specific fence strategy or setbacks for that specific area. So yeah, that would be the first part. So how you can kind of prepare your site and define your areas while taking into account Agri-PV needs, kind of. Then the second part is the equipment parts. So where you will be able to select especially your structure. So on that part in RatedPower, you have the option to use either tracker, fixed, or east-west structure. And you can choose your structure from a wide, I would say, database. And you also have the option to create your own structure manually if you want to try to replicate something you saw on the market and that you cannot find in the database. Also related to what Rocío mentioned in the first part, you have the option inside the software to simulate, let's say, some elevated structure by setting up a minimum ground clearance in here. And of course, it will be then taken into account for the yield calculation and bifacial simulation. So that would be a first part. And then also just to kind of come back on the few things Rocío mentioned about structure for the tracker part. In the software, we use a backtracking algorithm. However, if you want to try to replicate, let's say, more accurately, maybe a specific kind of tracker simulation, optimizing maybe the crop yield, for instance, you could potentially run multiple simulation with different structure and different tilt angle, and then kind of merge together the results using our energy yield result file that I will maybe show you at the end if I have enough time. So yeah, that would be for the structure creation part. Then we have the layout part also that is quite important for Agri-PV projects, in which you can basically play with the distances between your structure, either in the axial or pitch direction in here. We also have a quite interesting parameter for a lot of markets, which is the GCR, so the ground coverage ratio. And my colleague Javier will put in the chat the formula that we use in the software in order to calculate the GCR. But essentially in here, if you just want to set up, let's say, the GCR and then have an automatic pitch distance based on your kind of limitation for the GCR, you can just set up that value here, and then automatically the software will update the rest of the values. Thank you, Javier, so that you pasted it in the chat. And then some other option about the layout are the option about the roads. So the roads option, you can include some roads maybe for the agricultural activity, and to let just tractor pass inside the plant to indeed continue the agricultural activity of the land and in the land. So on that part, you could set up some kind of roads option, also roads width if needed. You would also have the option to set up a specific rotation if you want to match, let's say, the original path that maybe the farmer was using when kind of when working on the land. You could just rotate your structure in here if needed and try to match um, that that specific path, basically, in specific kind of angle, let's say. And you will also have a lot of setbacks options. So again, if you have some setbacks required, and maybe for some reason you need a specific distance between either your fence and the kind of border of your land parcel, or maybe the fence and the structure, you could just set that up on that part. And a last thing also to mention about the layout is that if you want to move some element after doing kind of that parametric part in the software, you would also have the option using the edit layout button that is at the top right. So in here, and if, for instance, let's say I don't want to have my power station to stay kind of in the middle in here, I will be able to just move it basically and put it in a specific place. That's quite a new feature we implemented beginning of the year. So you could just move it here and then validate your design, maybe to see if everything is fine, and regenerate the results and all of the documentation. And then last point I wanted to mention, so again, about the Agri-PV project, is that for the yield calculation part, you have the option to play with the albedo. So that will be very linked to the nature and the color of the ground and of the soil. And if, for instance, you're in a specific, let's say, agricultural piece of land, and maybe the nature of the soil change with the different season, you will have the option to set up a variable albedo, so a monthly one with a value changing every month, basically. And I think that will be it for the software part. I'm just gonna go back to the PowerPoint and to the last slide, that is questions. I think, exactly. So thank you for listening to the first part of the webinar, and now we're just gonna reply to your different questions, so you can drop them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helene. I see that there are already some questions in the chat. The first one is, what, in your opinion, is the future of agrivoltaics in terms of system type, trackers or vertical systems? Do you see trackers getting at the tariff of 9 cents? So that's really a great question. I think the future of agrivoltaics will include both trackers and vertical east-west systems, depending on the project, of course. And trackers can provide higher energy yield and make better use of the land, while vertical systems can be better for certain types of crops or when the space is very limited. So it's important to note that the leverage cost of electricity for agrivoltaic systems currently ranges between, I think it was 4 to 11 euro cents per kilowatt hour, depending on the system size and configuration. So in my opinion, achieving a tariff of 9 cents per kilowatt hour could be possible in the future, but it really depends on the location, the project specifications, and that would be my answer to the first question.
Perfect. And maybe just to add one point on what Rocío mentioned about just tracker and vertical east-west system, at least from my experience and from some interviews we conducted with RatedPower clients, the vertical east-west system are not, let's say, that popular or that used yet in the different markets at least we work with. But yeah, maybe we will see some evolution in the future, as it's also quite a new kind of topic and part of the solar industry. So yeah, thank you for that question. I see another question also for trackers. Can you do 2P trackers as well? So yes, that is possible. You have many options. If you want, I can open very quickly the software, but for the tracker part, you can just go in here and then look for a specific tracker, and you have indeed a lot of them in 2P. And for the tracking algorithm part also, that is in part of the question. Currently, so what we do is backtracking for the trackers. Maybe in the future we will include more customized tracking algorithm, but it's not sure yet, or not precisely part of our roadmap, let's say. And what I mentioned, like on my part, is that if you want basically to try to replicate at the moment at least a very specific tracking algorithm, maybe based on the crop yield or something like that, you could just do multiple simulation by basically, let's say, changing every time like kind of the tracking angle available for your structure, or maybe do some test with also some kind of fixed structure, but in an east-west, placed on an east-west axis, and then make the different documents kind of match together and put together the yield results. And also, I see one question about the ground coverage ratio. So basically, for that part, what we take into account for the calculation is really the structures area, kind of. So in here, for instance, if you have, let's say, the 40% for the GCR, it will be the ground coverage ratio for that area. Let's say, so really for kind of the area where you have structures, let's say, but we will not take into account the roads or the power station in that calculation. I think in the chat you can find the formula we use. Yeah, you have that in the chat. So it will be the table width divided by the pitch distance, basically for the tracker structure, and for the fix it will be the table width times the cosinus of the tilt angle divided by the pitch distance. I can see. Yeah, feel free also to take any question you may want, because we have quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I see right now one about the regulatory framework and function-wise. What do you think is still pending for the Spanish market to deploy as France and Germany? Well, that's a very good question, and mainly what we can highlight about the framework in Germany and in France is that they have a national regulation, and where rules define land use and farming requirements, and also for the project approval, this is crucial, and in Spain we don't have that. And also one thing to mention about Spain is the funding is also more limited. Spain right now has allocated around 77 million to 62 agrivoltaic projects so far. So that's very different than what France and Germany did. So more fundings also would help a lot Spain to improve in these kind of projects.
Perfect. And yeah, I'm just gonna take another question that I can see here. And if we don't reply to your question, we will follow up by email, because there is quite a quite
Yeah.
a lot. Just so you know, if we miss one, that's possible. I see one. What are the output provided by RatedPower software? So for example, layouts, BOM, etc. So here it's quite a more general, I would say, question. But for the output part, we provide quite complete package of documents. So with some reports about the design, about the yield, about the interconnection facility part. Also, if you design your interconnection facility within RatedPower, then we provide a bill of quantity or bill of material, BOM, the yield results as well that I wanted to show you. And we also have a listing of posts where you can see the different piles and structure, a listing of cable, because we also do cable sizing, and then quite a lot of drawings with like the general layout in PDF, CAD format, and KML, DWG as well for the layout in 3D, a 3D scene that you can import in PVCs, and quite a lot of SLDs basically in here. Yeah, if you want, as a follow-up, since we should be able to get your email address, we can send you a kind of a package of document, a default one, let's say, a random one, just so you can have a look. Perfect. I can see also one question about battery. So adding battery to the Agri-PV park and use it in the simulation. So yes, it's completely possible. In the software, you can either add a DC coupled or an AC coupled BESS. And yeah, it would happen in this tab. For AC coupled, you would just have to define a specific area, basically for the BESS. So just in here, kind of drawing an area for your battery, and then you will have some BESS option basically in the software, and you can also do the same with DC coupled BESS. So yeah, here just to show you very quickly, for instance, you would have this tab basically where you can select BESS type, equipment, layout option, and dispatch option as well. I can also see one question. So mentioning, is it possible to have 2P and 1P trackers, different row spacing in a single plot of land, something that could be used for pilot studies? So on that part, if you want to have different row spacing within, let's say, a same project, it's something you can simulate by just defining basically two different areas, and then you would have the option. Let me just do that quickly for the users, maybe of the software. So you could just define two kind of parts in your plant, let's say, and then for the row spacing, you could go to the layout tab, distances, and then set up a different distance kind of per area. So you would have specific row spacing in here and another one in here. So yeah, that would be two row spacing. Yeah. Apply a different configuration per area, then distance, and then you could set up like yeah, maybe that row spacing for that area, and maybe for instance something else, like maybe a 20% this year for the second area. But just to fully reply to your question, however, it's not possible yet, at least to have two types of structure kind of inside inside one design or one simulation, let's say. So if you want to simulate like 2P on one part and 1P trackers on the other part, you would have to do a first simulation with the 2P trackers, and then do basically another simulation with your 1P trackers, and kind of put together the documents to have a full report taking into account the both parts of your plant. It's part of our roadmap, but I don't have the exact time frame in mind.
Okay, Helene, I'm seeing here also
Yeah.
a question about the 3D visualization of the project.
Oh,
If
okay.
it's possible.
Yeah, I can. So that's so we indeed have a 3D visualization part of the plants that you can check either directly inside the software, and you can see the topography. In here we also have an output, so if you want then to work maybe with AutoCAD and do a more fine-tuned kind of 3D layout, let's say, you can use the DWYG in here. Mm, mm, mm. There's also one question about the SIG compatibility, capabilities. Sorry. So yeah, for that part, if you use, for instance, maybe QGIS for the first part or another software like that, you can import your site and the different restricted areas, for instance, in shapefile. If you use shapefile or KML, KMZ, and CAD, but CAD is not an SIG tool. And as an output, you will get the layout in KML, so that could work in a way with an SIG software. I see also a question about vertical topology for the structure. So yeah, I assume people that ask the question are users of the software, because the question is, are you guys planning to add vertical topology? Because indeed it's something we don't have currently within the tool. Basically what we advise customer usually is to just tilt to 80 degrees a fixed structure that you would have just rotate in the east-west kind of axis. No, not east-west, sorry, north-south axis. But yeah, it's something that is part of our kind of long-term reflection, but we haven't implemented it yet, sorry, because we, as I mentioned, conducted some interviews end of last year, I think, with clients. In the end, at least from what we heard, it was not used that much and not worth kind of the effort, let's say, of developing it and including it in the tool, and they were fine with the workaround of just using an 80 degrees tilt. But as I see a few questions about that, I'm gonna do another kind of follow up on that with the rest of the team to maybe push for that feature. If for you at least it's quite important and it's a big part of your project. I see also one question about the possibility to design your own trackers. Not usual 2D, 2P. So yeah, on that part, I would say that it really depends on what your tracker is. We have the option to kind of to let user create their own structures, but yeah, it will really depend on what you want to kind of design. If there is enough inputs to create your own trackers. If you want to follow up with us by email, maybe with like the specific tracker you would like to replicate, I would be happy to have a look. Yeah, and if we cannot, it would be good feedback also for us. So yeah.
Yeah, and also I'm seeing some people requesting the samples of the project documentation. So yeah, we will get in touch with you to send you the documentation, and also other people asking about more financial aspects. I will get in touch with you in order to talk about this. Okay?
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's more or less that. Maybe I see one question that is more for you, Rocío, about the license of the software, if it's annual subscription, if you want to
Yeah,
reply. Yeah.
that's what I was mentioning. I will
Okay.
gonna get in touch with all of you that are asking those kind of questions. But yeah, our subscription
Oh,
are
okay.
annual subscriptions. But yeah, we can talk about it in the next days. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Helene.
Perfect. Then yeah. Then I think we can. I guess we can maybe wrap it up and then follow up with the question we may have missed, because they are coming kind of one by one, and sometimes we miss one, but then afterward we can get the full list of question and your email address.
Exactly.
So yeah, then I guess we can wrap up the meeting. In
Yes,
here,
thank you
oopsie.
very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And in here you have our contact if you have some additional question in the future and just want to get in touch, you can. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.